Welcome to Registered, the podcast of the Catholic Register, where we'll be taking a look beyond the headlines of the stories that graced all of our platforms this past week. I'm Mickey Conlon, editor of the Register, alongside associate editor Quinton Amundson and reporter Luke Mandato. This week's episode is brought to you by Missions and Martyrs, our new magazine celebrating 100 years of the Martyrs Shrine in Midland, Ontario. Go to catholicregister.org/shrine100 or call 1-855-441-4077 extension 1 to order your copy. Welcome back to Quinton after a well-deserved week off and sharing some time with family. Hope it was a good time for you. But the news, hey, surprisingly, it didn't stop, even without Quinton. Luke was on hand to keep us up to date in the Catholic world, and there was quite the fascinating story you wrote. In fact, we put it on our cover this week about human longevity. People are always looking for ways to extend their time on Earth, and Luke, you took a look at this through a Catholic lens. How about you tell us what you learned in your conversations?
Yeah, thanks, Mickey. This is an interesting one, and I'm not even entirely sure where to start with it, but as you mentioned, it deals with longevity and sort of this new reinvigorated pursuit that people seem to be having about trying to extend their lives as much as possible. And when we're referring to this, I'm not referring to necessarily just eating healthy and getting exercise. There's actual people now, whether podcasters or influencers or we see former billionaires doing it, where this whole trend of they call it biohacking, constantly monitoring their health to the point of making sure that every available marker to them is in their control. And I had a long think about this as a Catholic, and I thought, is this something that we should be really focusing on? Is this something natural to focus on? And what really prompted me to think about this is there was a new study that just released from a team of scientists, a couple experts at Harvard Medical School and a university in Japan as well. They've created a new tool. They've dubbed it a transcriptomic clock. And essentially, if I can explain this without taking 10 minutes, it's a tool that can accurately measure a person's biological age based on a person's cell function rather than other markers that are traditionally used to determine one's age. Um, so this is a revolutionary sort of breakthrough tool that they've discovered and that they've been working on. I sat down with Dr. Jose Moraes. He is a full professor of medicine at Montreal's McGill University. He's also, Mickey, a practicing Catholic. And we had a very fascinating conversation on what this research means. What does it mean for Catholics trying to navigate this sort of longevity trend that we're seeing? And it was a very interesting conversation. I know you gave it a read, Mickey. Is there anything that stood out to you immediately before we get into some of the finer details of what he had to say?
Well, yeah, and I believe it was in the story you mentioned about some movies like Soylent Green, I guess the Good Doctor, and Logan's Run, and so it gets in almost into a bit of the science fiction realm. So, but it almost read like this new discovery, the hackology or whatever you called it, biohacking. How maybe there's some hope that maybe we can mess around with people to maybe we'll extend our life. Well, I don't know. Do we want to tempt fate like that? As we put on the cover, in fact, it was tempting fate, and it's like, hang on there, folks. It's not in the scientists' hands; it's in God's hands, and
That's
we can't
that's
forget that.
exactly right. That's exactly right. And that's sort of where our conversation took off, was to the fact that if we believe that God created and ordered an intelligent universe, there is a place for science in that, but it should be the search of that order. It should not be, looking for all the answers, because the answers really ultimately aren't up to us. So it was an interesting, I keep saying it's an interesting conversation, but we just kept going back and forth on different points. We kind of landed on the idea that the research itself, which I should say Dr. Jose was incredibly fascinated and appreciative of. He said what they're doing, it's the science is too far for me to fully understand it from what I was reading, Mickey, but he seems to believe this really is a major discovery and breakthrough project that these Harvard scientists have looked into. He believes that research is perfectly ethical. He thinks it corresponds with the human desire to know, and to do as science wants scientists to do. What he did say, however, is that the danger really arises when God is fully excluded, and when science sort of shifts from that idea of finding ways to help people and alleviate suffering to trying to control our own destiny. And I think that's really where the interesting conversation lies.
Well, and we see it in all the science fiction movies, and one of the themes is, it's like, all right, don't mess around too much. There's a plan out there, and they may not say, hey, it's God's plan, but it's kind of embedded in there that there is a plan. So, it's in its infancy, so we'll probably never see it come to fruition, or at least I won't, the old guy that I am. Maybe you guys have a better chance than I do, but we'll see. But it's kind of amazing though, because so much of what we've discussed in the Register over the last decade is about people wanting to end their lives. That, of course, being through MAiD, medical assistance in dying. So it's pretty refreshing to be reporting on people who want to extend life. So, hey, good for them there. But on that front, we do have a little victory in the MAiD game, I guess we could call it. It looks like there will be an indefinite ban on offering MAiD to the mentally ill, sorry. A special parliamentary committee is recommending a stop to the expansion of MAiD, which was to take effect on March 17th, 2027. And I know this has been pushed back a couple times already. There's people are not really looking forward to doing this. So uh, maybe this recommendation, we'll see what happens. But of course, it's in the hands of Parliament now, where ideology has been known to trump common sense. So we'll soon find out where this goes. But we talk about little victories, and so many people are going to call this a huge victory. This maybe, all right, MAiD is boom, it's the full stop. You're not going any further. Well, we'll see. So any victory after this rapid expansion of MAiD over the past decade, and of course the millions of lives lost to abortion over the past 50, 60 years or more, it's good news. What do you guys think, Quinton?
It was so great to hear from Nicole Scheidel and Alex Schattenberg, who have been on the front lines of this fight. And you could just tell the emotion in Nicole's voice when I spoke to her yesterday, when she just said it simply. It was a really good day, June 17th. And maybe that's really all that needs to be said. And assuming that there will be an even better day ahead when probably the government validates the findings of the reports and goes ahead with the recommendations. I mean, that just provides wind in the sails of a movement that has really been struggling to, bring forth an alternative culture of life message. And it just creates a little bit more momentum to be like, okay, well, let's go further. Let's actually revisit track 2 MAiD. Let's try to push provinces to do something like Bill 18 in Alberta, which brought out a lot of reforms and recently became law. It makes scenarios that may have seemed very, improbable, suddenly a lot more probable. There is a lot of good things happening on that front. And I think it really does help that other countries like Slovenia, like the UK, like Scotland, they have shot down MAiD legislation because they saw what was happening in Canada, and the Pandora's box that was open led to 100,000 deaths in just 10 years. I mean, the number is still shocking. We've talked about it a few times, but let's say it again, 100,000 deaths in 10 years. Like, that is something we desperately need to step back from the brink from. And we saw a lot of good things happen during the committee meetings. So maybe sanity is going to prevail here. That would be a beautiful thing to say.
Well, yeah, we can only hope, definitely. So, but it's it's a small victory, really, right now, and I'm sure many people in the pro-life field, you know, they're not into they don't really want the small victories. They want the big victory and an end right off the bat to abortion, right off the bat, an end to MAiD. So, God bless them for looking that way, but you gotta, I guess, take what little victories you can get right now. So, and this is one of them. So we will see what happens. Not going to. We hope that they keep up their good work, and I think maybe there will be some changes. We'll see. So, if we're looking for some hope, how about God knows we need it on this front? An interfaith walk around our city next week is hoping to bring the issue of homelessness in Toronto to the forefront. We've got so much attention on our city with the World Cup and all. So, Luke, you spoke with Father Prakash Lohale from the Mary Ward Center, one of the Catholic groups involved in this initiative. So, what is on their plate and what are they asking of our civic leaders?
Thanks, Mickey. Yes, I'll try and not say that this is interesting 10 more times while I'm going through this story, but I'll say it once at the beginning to get it out of the way. This is also an interesting piece that we're looking into. And as you mentioned, an interfaith walk and rally for housing justice organized between Crisis in Our City in partnership, of course, with the Mary Ward Center. Um, Interfaith leaders, students, workers are all going to be gathering at Nathan Phillips Square on June 24th in the morning to essentially become visible witness to some of the shelter crisis that we're seeing in our city. They're going to be taking a walk throughout the neighborhood down there, and then they're going to be returning to Nathan Phillips Square with a certain, I guess, call for action towards Mayor Laryea Cyle. And what they're looking for is immediate solutions to some of the homelessness problems that continue to plague Toronto. And it's something that's been exacerbated a bit by the recent World Cup arriving in Toronto. Again, we had a little chat about this yesterday, Mickey, and with the team, that this sort of thing happens really in every major city when major events come to town. That cities like Toronto, with a large population and unfortunately a large homelessness population, often find themselves with even less places to go when something like this is taken to the streets and the city is trying to look its best. So both Father Lohale and Eugenia Lapagna, she's the advocacy and outreach support worker of the project, are hoping to bring some focus back to what these homeless people are going through and look for some solutions immediately as further plans can be developed. And that's another part of the call to action is keep developing options, keep finding places that we can help these people out in our city.
Well, you say the visible witness, and I'll tell you I don't know if this is because of the World Cup, but I live in the east end of Toronto, and where we play hockey, me and the boys, we gather. There's a park beside the rink, and it seems in the last few weeks that we're seeing a lot more homeless people hanging around that park. And, we'd always seen a little bit of it in the past, but there seems to be a bit of a more of a presence. We're not seeing encampments or anything like that, but you're just seeing them around the neighborhood. And of course, we've got a homeless shelter will be coming into our neighborhood they're working on it right now. We'll see how quick the city works at it, but it's not a downtown problem anymore. It is an issue that you see everywhere, and I've seen it where I've been gone shopping in the mall there, and there's someone who is obviously homeless. They're living in their car, and they're underneath a light so that they can read. So stuff like that. So it's out there. So we'll see what happens. I don't like to see that, they're trying to, overshadow well, they're not really overshadowing the World Cup, but they're bringing that into it, but it's kind of what you have to do, because that one of the things, as Father Lohale said, and the other people that you spoke with, says, look at all the money we're sinking into the World Cup. Maybe that could have gone to some of our own people. So
it's a good point. And I think one of the best things he said is that he just wants people, I guess, to focus on these issues as well. The World Cup's great. He said, greatest sporting event in the world, in one of the greatest cities in the world. But, the true measure of the city is how we treat the least in our cities, not how great our sports tournaments are. So just another thing to think about. And it's had a good time as well. So,
yeah. So, well, if we're going to bring up the World Cup, let's go out on a positive note for it, because the performance so far of some of our local Catholic school grads has been pretty outstanding. Most of you listening will already know the result of the Canada versus Qatar game. This is recorded before the game this afternoon. But the performances of our Catholic grads have been pretty spectacular. Cyle Larin from Brampton's St. Edmund Campion Secondary, he scored the first Canadian World Cup goal on home soil in a 1-1 tie with Bosnia-Herzegovina. It very easily could have been Richie Laryea, who beat the Bosnian keeper, only to have a defender clear the ball off of the crossbar. So there's a lot of love out there for Richie, especially from his former school, St. Jerome here in Toronto. Quinton, you spoke to one of Richie's former teachers.
Just very warm things to say about teaching Richie back when he was in grade 6 and grade 7, back in 2007 and 2008. And it wasn't like any one particular moment that really stood out from her experiences with him. Like she just recalled a very, nice mannered, respectful man with a great smile, with, a really good family, and that's a really good way to remember a student nowadays. And she just is so proud of, the man that he's become. With a couple of children, she routinely sends him messages on Instagram just to congratulate him on his young family and obviously his success with Toronto FC and now Team Canada. And the school community's behind him in a big way. And he wasn't able to get to the school this year, but he's gone back and remembered where he's come from, and he has gone on to have quite an incredible career, because he went to Vancouver, he went overseas for a time, and now he is a dependable, guy in the Team Canada lineup in his prime. And Barbara Panesy is just loving every second of this journey for Richie.
Yeah, great for him, and the whole team, because they've been great ambassadors for the country. It's been great to see how far they've come in this core especially has been the last 5-6 years, and just steadily getting better and better and better. And they tie their first game, and it's almost a disappointment, whereas before it'd be, let's hope we score a goal. And they scored a goal, and it's like, well, we fell short. We should have scored more. And so we can only ask for the best for these guys and send out our prayers for them, and go Canada. So you guys will be watching the game today, I'm sure.
I was just gonna ask for permission to leave the desk for a little bit at 3 and cheer the boys on. I think within the confines of the rules of the World Cup, it's only fair.
Okay, well, I guess we can do that. We had Oscar in our office, who's from Colombia. He stayed up to all hours of the evening last night to watch the game, and I'm not even sure who won. Did Colombia win? They were up 1-0 when I last saw. So
3-1 to Colombia. I sent him a nice long email with just a goal all the way through it after they scored last night. So he hasn't answered, but he's still sleeping in.
Okay, congratulations to Colombia and Oscar and the home team, but we're gunning for you guys, just like we beat you in Copa. So Oscar, if you're listening. So So with that, guys, I think we'll bring this episode of Registered to a close. I'd like to thank you two for joining me. Thanks to our sponsor, which of course is the Register's Missions and Martyrs magazine, celebrating 100 years of the Martyrs Shrine in Midland, Ontario, which you can order at catholicregister.org/shrine100 or call 1-855-441-4077 extension 1. I'd also like to thank all you people for tuning in, and be sure to stay tuned to what's going on in the Catholic world at catholicregister.org. So again, thanks for tuning in, and we hope you'll be back to join us next week.